Hello. So, as you can see, I have a new setup. You can see that also I am reviewing The Hobbit. It's a better part of my setup. You can see my movies I'm reviewing right over here, and my pills. You can also see those. I don't know why they're there. They shouldn't be there. You can also see my alcoholism. Anyway, so I'm reviewing The Hobbit, not the movies, not them. I mean, yeah, they made too many, but I'm not reviewing those. The ones thing I'm reviewing is the book. I haven't really reviewed books before, but the book is good. I just read it for the first time ever. I've never read. I read the first couple chapters like a couple years ago, but I haven't really read the entire thing through or paid attention until now. So the book, let's just get into the review.
Yeah, this is how it started way back in the day.
Okay, so The Hobbit, right, Kitty, right? What is The Hobbit about? I don't know. So let's first talk about history. Now, The Hobbit was the very first in the Middle-earth saga, I guess. Before the movies and before they made The Lord of the Rings and a couple other spin-off books that apparently exist. But basically what happened is The Hobbit was like popular. It was pretty popular. Not hugely popular. It was like pretty popular enough. And then, by the way, this was made like the 50s. Anyway, then the publishers said, okay, we gotta make some more. And he was like, cool, I'll do that. So he made the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which people like. And it spawned a couple movies based on the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And they were kind of okay. They were okay. I'm just kidding. I've never seen them. But I do own them. Where are they? Let me get them. Where are they? I just got them. So we've got Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, Lord of the Rings, Two Towers, Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, all in differently colored cases. This one is like, kind of like greenish black. This one's like burgundy, and this one's just black. This one won 11 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. And is also considered one of the top 100 best movies of all time. The only movie on that list that was from 2000 onward. So it was pretty good. So naturally, they thought, how can we milk this? So they turned and then, oh yeah, that idiot George R.R. Martin or Tolkien, or I don't remember his name, made another book. A children's book, or it's young adult book. Or, I mean, back then it was like the same. So, I mean, okay. They're like, okay. So maybe we should make a movie about this. But then the producer was like, no, we should not make a movie about this. We should make 3 movies about this. And then the director and everyone else was like, but how would we do that? Because this book isn't very long. So how are we going to make 3 fucking movies about this? So then they were like, well, let's just make some stuff up and put it into the movie. And they were like, great. So now we have these movies, these two, and another one that I don't own, but who cares? Because I'll own it soon when I want to watch it, or whatever. So, let's review the Hobbit book itself, what it is. So, let's give you a little plot synopsis. So, Bilbo Baggins is comically not very fond of adventures. Like, they mention it, like, several times by name. It's ridiculous. Like, Gandalf comes in and is like, I'm looking for somebody who wants an adventure. Not an Avenger, an adventure. And then Bilbo Baggins is like, you're not going to find anybody that wants an adventure. Sorry, an adventure. And then he accidentally asks him for tea. And then he's like, great. And then he gets like 13 dwarves. And are like, okay, so you said 13's unlucky, so you gotta want a 14th one. Here, I got your 14th. Bilbo Baggins. It's a cool name, by the way. So they were like, cool. Anyway, so then he like gets them all tea and then supper, and then they depart for this adventure sorts. And they meet several things on the way. They get stopped by some spiders, some elves, several things. But then their adventure is they want to go kill this dragon, right? And get this gold, right? So then they get there, and it's like I don't know, they steal a couple things. Dragon's mad. This bear person shoots a guy, kills the dragon. They think he's dead for like 1 second, and then he comes back and he's like, oh, fuck you, I'm not dead. And then he's like, I want a share of gold. And they're like, and then the leader of the dwarves is like, no, fuck you. And then everyone else is like, yeah, well, but like though, but he but then they're like, well, he killed the dragon. He deserves a share. So then, Bilbo Baggins, who got his share, he's like, cool. Well, then he takes the biggest, like, jewel, which is, like, apparently the most important thing ever, and they didn't even, like, really mention it. And then it was like, that's the best jewel ever. So much that neither of the dwarves would trade the entire treasure heap for that one jewel because of how cool it is. So Bilbo Baggins is like, okay, I'll take this as my share. And then he goes over to the elves, and the guy is like, okay, I don't want war to break out, so I'm going to give you this, right? You tell him, I don't know. You give him this, and he'll give you your share. And he's like, okay, cool. So then, then they're like, okay, cool, give me my share now. And then he's like, okay, I'll give you the share. And then war breaks out for some freaking reason. I don't know. At this point, I had kind of fallen asleep. Or not really, I just kind of zoned out because you know, the adventure part, that was actually probably the best part of the book that I just skipped over, and it was like 90% of the book. This last bit was just like boring. Anyway, he dies. Main dwarf dies. These other two dwarves die, and then Bilbo Baggins spends the rest of his days being rich because the guy that had the 14th share gave him some gold and stuff. So he's like, I'm rich now. But then everybody hates him now. Anyway, so did I like this? Let's save that for later. Some small criticisms I have. My main one being there are these dumb songs that just show up every once in a while, and I'm like, they show up. It's not like they happen once or twice. They happen like 5 or 6 or maybe even they happen like 10 times. They happen way too much. Way too much. That's my, and I usually skip over them, but it's just like I don't want to. Like, they shouldn't have them in the first place. Like, what do they add to the story? They never add anything. Usually they're kind of like the dwarf songs from Snow White. Hi-ho, hi-ho, it's off to work we go. Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's pointless. Is this supposed to be a musical? Well, it's a book, so it can't be. Anyway, it doesn't really help that the person reading the audiobook, Rob Inglis, was not a very good singer. I mean, if he was, then, you know, didn't really show it off that well. Anyway. So that was like one of the only like big problems I had with it. A couple things, small things, like Bilbo Baggins gets saved by luck, which has something to do with the fucking like prophecy. It's always dumb. I don't always say prophecies and time travel and stuff like that. They're just lazy plot points. Like, they cause too many plot holes. Anything that is define like future and past, anything like that, it's just not like, oh, you're destined to do this. Well, no, he's not. At least in Harry Potter, it kind of made sense where it was like, well, he could have not done it, but if he hadn't done it, then he would have, then thousands of people would have died. And maybe if Voldemort didn't want to, like, you know, didn't put so much sword in the prophecy, then the prophecy would have never come true. So it's not a bond, like, it's not a thing where it needs to happen. It just usually, like, it has to in this case because of some events, but whatever. In this, it was just like, okay, you were destined to make it through and whatever. Honestly, I thought that there were a lot of, like, a couple things were luck, but then when I really thought about it, a lot of them were just him being, like, really clever. I don't know, maybe I'm an idiot, but he seemed to be really bright. I mean, for no good reason. Also, there were a lot of, like, things that just didn't, like, they never talked about. Like, for example, like, during the spider scene, they're like, okay, he's really good at throwing stones. So he, like, picks up some stones, kills some spiders with those stones, and I'm like, they never mention that talent again. What was the point in bringing it up in the first place? You could have just said he stabbed all the spiders. It would have been easier. Gollum. I mean, for considering the fact that from the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit movies, he's like the most famous character, probably. I mean, he was an amazing piece of CGI for the time, at least. And, I mean, even now, he's pretty convincing. Andy Serkis plays him well and stuff. But, I don't know, I'm not reviewing the movies right now. In the book, he's just kind of pointless. I mean, he like, it shows up once and then never shows up again. The only reason that was there was for some Deus Ex Machina for Bilbo Baggins to find the ring, which helps him out, like, a lot. It's a lot of Deus Ex Machina stuff. Also, I thought Bilbo Baggins was married. But they, like, mentioned it at the beginning that he was married to some guy who was, like, rich. And then that's it. Anyway. This movie, sorry, not movie, it's a book. This book is amazing. It's a really good book. And I'd recommend, if you're a fan of the fantasy genre or a fan of Harry Potter, then you'd like this. This is a good read. I mean, the ending is a little iffy, but, like, most of the book is just really good. It really does a good job establishing this huge, gigantic world in, like, one book. I mean, in the Harry Potter books, there are 7 books. 7 books. I feel like there's more to know, but in this, it feels like you've just stepped right into their universe. Obviously, they didn't cover nearly as much as in the Harry Potter books, but that's only because this book is, like, it's only one book. I mean, obviously, it's not going to be, as thorough as Harry Potter is. But, if you want to, even if you don't like Lord of the Rings, I would recommend this book. I haven't read Lord of the Rings, but I assume that it's different. Lord of the Rings was kind of meant for an older audience than The Hobbit. The Hobbit was kind of considered a younger book for like, younger kids, but then the Lord of the Rings was kind of for older people, I'd say they probably have a different tone. So I recommend it. If you haven't already read it, you should probably. It's good. Let's see, what would I rate it? It's like an 8 out of 10. It's good. It's good. So, I mean, there's not really much else to say. So, bye.